Thank you for joining us for today's podcast. Today, we look at Eugene Mitchell's book, Closing the Racial Wealth Gap. Now, let's go into today's podcast and talk about how to close the wealth gap.
Let's not have poor planning, and he says the word is anticipation, and I love the fact that he used that word in this because sometimes we wait for things to happen. He says, no, in this life, you got to anticipate some things. You got to be honest with yourself. You got to be able to look at your position. You got to be able to look not just at tomorrow, but you got to see 15 years down the line, 20 years down the line, and you need to know what's at stake in your family, and then you've got to anticipate something happening. You got to feel and just be in tune with how things are flowing. You got to be able to look at this economy. You got to be able to look at your ability to save. Am I going to be able to save this much? Am I going to be able to accelerate these payments and pay this house off in 15 years or 10 years? Can I refinance this house? If I cannot refinance this house, how can I position my family to be able to pay off this house in case something happens to me? What can I do? I don't have enough savings to send my child to college. Maybe I can buy this policy and then borrow against it and help to ensure that my child has the education that they need. I don't know. Be creative with it. But what he's saying, you got to anticipate some things. And you got to be full well knowledgeable of how these things work so that you can use them to your favor to be able to support your family the way your family needs to be supported so everybody can thrive, right? And so he says, look, gone should be the day of us. He talks about holding car washes, fish fries. Come on now, selling customized T-shirts. Come on, at the funeral, trying to pay for the funeral, or trying to send our kid off to college and trying to make these chicken baskets and stuff like that. And he's saying, look, if that's what you do as a business, that's fine. Make the money, sell the chicken, sell the French fries, but let's not make it the sole answer to our lack of planning. Let's not make it the sole response to our inability to be disciplined with our money and to be disciplined and strategic with our wealth. He's saying, look, let's not make that the answer. We can do that and we can profit at it, but don't let it be the thing that has to be the automatic response to your lack of diligence with your finances. He said, look, step up to the plate and do what is right with your money. Amen. All right. So he fast forwards, and then the second thing is he talks about is action committed. And this is where he gets a little bit more into that marketing piece. And he's talking about how the image that is set for us is that we are supposed to be preparing to die. And preparing to die for the African American in the marketing of these insurance companies stops at the grave. That's it. And so because of that, we don't have the right type of image or thought to how we should be doing things and how we should be preparing. And some of us, he talks about the chicken before the egg, is whether it's us coming in and thinking about the resources that are needed, or us understanding that the resources are needed for us to get the resources at the end. Like how do I need it? How do I prosper my family? How do I sustain my family? And then what type of insurance should I buy? And so what most are saying is like, look, just get some insurance. And this is where Eugene poses an argument that I could not, of course, whole serve on, because I'm not an expert on insurance like this guy is, or like some of you might be. But he says, look, for the most part, when they do try to go for us with insurance, what they say is, look, just do some term life, right? And he says, look, the term life is the cheapest route that you can go when you have it. So you have the term versus the whole. And so he says, when they do get us to buy insurance, what they normally sell us on is the term life. And so the term life is very attractive because you're saying, you know what, I don't have those $75 a month or the $100 a month to put towards this whole life policy. So what I'll do is I'll take this term life policy because it's $35 or it's $45 a month. And so I'll take that policy and I'll be able to do that. And in case some emergency happens, then my family will benefit from the cash value of this policy that has been amassed during my time contributing to it. And he says, look, that is a decent strategy, but he's saying that he thinks that we should actually just go ahead, plan, and be disciplined and go out for the whole life policy. One of the things that he talks about as a whole life is that it is a whole life policy and it does not have to be renewed. And one of the things that he wants us to be thinking about is the ongoing health concerns that we have in our community. First of all, you could be the picture perfect, the pillar of health right now at 25, and you could get this policy. But if you get this term policy, and then the term policy is for, let's say, 20 years, right? So then at the end of 20 years, now at the end of 20 years, now you're 45 years of age. And so at 45 years of age, some of us have incurred high blood pressure. Some of us may have incurred now and have diabetes, or some of us may have some issues with our cholesterol. Or what about your weight? Maybe now you're not exactly 125, 130 pounds anymore. Now you're more like 225, maybe like 240, 250 now. And so he's saying at the end of that policy, now you have to re-up with that policy. And now, because of these laws, they can look at you and they can say, hey, look, now we're going to re-evaluate you, and we may give you this same policy again and re-up you for another 20 years with this policy. But because of the changes in your health, now this same policy is going to now cost you $55 as opposed to the $35. And for some of us, that would be great. Like, look, cool, it's just another $20. I make a lot more money now and I'm in good shape. But he's saying, look, if you push for the whole, you could get that whole life when you're in the pillar of, you're in the best health position that you can be at 20 and 25. You get that whole life policy, which lasts your entire lifetime. And it doesn't matter what happens to your health along the way, because you don't have to re-up the policy. So you may start off paying that $55 or $60 at 20, but that's $60 for the entire lifespan of your earning. And as your earning potential goes up, that policy will be easier and easier to make and to sustain, because your earning potential is going up, right? So he's saying, look, it's good to go for the policy if that's all you can do. But if you can, go ahead and shoot while your health is in the greatest position that it's in, so that you can go ahead and nail down that $55 policy now. And the way we have to think of it is this. Right now, this policy is going to cost me $55. But if I wait to get this policy in 10 years or 15 years, the entry point for that policy will be $75 or $100. Now, it'll still be $100 for the duration of your life, which is fine. But what he's saying is that you could have started a lot earlier and you could have gotten it at a cheaper rate. So he's saying you might as well go ahead and get it as early as you can and lock in for that cheaper rate, and then just be diligent and ride it out, so you don't have to worry about your health concerns being an issue in you getting or maintaining this policy once it turns up, right? So he's suggesting that we go out for the whole life policy, and that might be something that benefits us more in the long run. So he says, look, that type of insurance traditionally less expensive, he's talking about the term, since it only provides coverage for a defined term, as opposed to the whole life insurance, which is more expensive but provides coverage for the entire duration of your lifetime. So he really wants us to be thinking about that. Yes, you do have this smaller term, and in some cases it really might be the best thing for you, but you do have to understand that if you can do this, then you have something over the expanse of life that you don't have to come back and review every 15, every 20 years, and might not be approved for it, or might have to have some type of long expense, higher expense with it at a later date. So it says this: it's well documented fiscally, African Americans are one of the most conservative racial groups and among the least likely to invest in the stock market. He's talking about this as an action to be taken because the majority of us, according to his research, are not investing in the stock market. So he's saying, look, let this be your stock market. Let this be your replacement. So you're not investing in the stock market like everybody else. Fine, maybe that doesn't tickle your fancy. You don't have to do that, but there is this alternative where you can invest $35 a month, just like you might be doing with a stock that you're investing in, or just like the mutual fund that you might be getting into, $55 or $45 a month. You can take that money, and as opposed to being in the stock market, like he says, that fluctuates, you can get into something that does not fluctuate and that has a guaranteed number that you can focus on and say, this $55 a month is going to net my family $500,000 when I pass, and I can count on that $500,000 to be there for my family, as opposed to them having to cash in a whole bunch of stocks, and who knows, maybe it does add up to $600,000, or maybe it only adds up to $150,000, and I can say, man, I invested all of this money, but because of this fluctuation, my family only has $150,000, where I could have invested the same amount of money and guaranteed that my family would receive this amount of money. So he's saying, look, nothing against the stock market. We should be in the stock market. I am, and I think that you should be too. Not that that has anything to do with salvation, people. It don't. So it ain't a sin not to be in the stock market. Come on now. Sometimes we make statements and be like, really? Come on now. That's not true. But on the end, he's saying, look, you do need to be thinking about this. And if you're not in the stock market, this is an alternative that you can do that can fast forward some things and guarantee that your family has a certain amount of profit at the end of the duration of your life.
Thank you for joining us for this discussion of Closing the Racial Wealth Gap, a book by Eugene Mitchell. We want to hear from you. Contact us at #PastorJDO3 or #JDO3Podcast. We want you to join this great discussion. Again, thank you for joining us on Pastor JDO3, the podcast. We look forward to having great discussions with you.